Welcome to CIR's webinar series, which is back after a bit of a hiatus this year. We have some actually two neat presentations for you tonight. And that is Hail to the Whales with Holly Lohuis and Island Fauna Tales with Chuck Graham. It actually sounds better when you say Hail to the Whales and Island Fauna Tales, doesn't it? Okay, so I'll say it that way. With Holly Lohuis, Chuck Graham. There we got it. Okay. So that's today, that's here, that's now. Welcome. And let me give you a couple of little house rules that we observe when we're doing our webinars at CIR. First off, your microphone's muted. But we do want interaction. So please use the Q&A, not the chat, but the Q&A feature of your Zoom window to enter in questions for Holly and Chuck. And we'll be able to answer them. We want to wait until the end of both of their presentations to be able to answer those questions. So feel free, as if you have any right now, or obviously as things come up during the webinar, to type in a question. We love them. We want you to interact with us, and that's the way we do it on our webinars, and it seems to work pretty well. So please do it. What else we got? Let's see. John Ziegler, our marketing director, he doesn't know this, is now going to tell you what we'll have next month.
Oh yeah, we're going to have a presentation from the Friends of the Island Fox.
Thank you. So Friends of the Island Fox is a great organization helping those little critters that you're seeing on the slide right now. So look, they were a part of CIR for a while. We hosted them as a nonprofit, but nowadays they've been their own nonprofit for many years now, and they're accomplishing a lot of great stuff. So without any further ado, let us start off by talking with Holly here and giving her an introduction, and then hearing her presentation, please, Holly. She's a marine biologist, conservationist, and educator known for her passionate advocacy for ocean conservation. With over 30 years of experience, she has dedicated her life to studying and protecting marine ecosystems around the world. She's a UCSB graduate, yay, in marine science, and has worked, her work includes over 25 years with Jean-Michel Cousteau and his marine conservation organization, Ocean Future Society. Her work includes being an expedition diver, on-camera marine biologist, and field producer. This has taken her around the world with Jean-Michel Cousteau and his production team, showcasing the wonders of our planet, of our water planet, and illuminating the urgent need for its protection. Holly was the co-star on Cousteau's 3D IMAX film Secret Ocean, as well as featured in PBS's 11-hour series Jean-Michel Cousteau Ocean Adventures. So with that, I will turn it over to Holly Lohuis to talk to us about whales. Yay!
Yay! Thank you very much, Ken. Thank you, John, and good evening, everybody, and welcome here to the comforts of our little home here. And we're very appreciative of this opportunity to really take you around the world, but to highlight our own front yard of the Santa Barbara Channel and the Channel Islands National Park and Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary. So as Ken mentioned, UCSB Gaucho, go Gauchos, and feel very fortunate to spend much of my career with Jean-Michel Cousteau, and his nonprofit is Ocean Future Society, based here in Santa Barbara. Been on expedition with him around the world and really just filming the wonders of our water planet. And really just to start off this evening, to take you right on a boat ride with Island Packers out to the Channel Islands. We do have such an amazing national treasure right off the coast here of Santa Barbara and Ventura. So 5 of the 8 Channel Islands that are part of the national park And just to share with you what we've been seeing the last 3 days on the Island Packer boats, also the Condor Express and another whale watching boat in Santa Barbara Whale Watch, in which Adam Ernster works on, and shared some of these beautiful drone footages of the same blue whale that we saw from the Island Packer boat. So blue whales in the Santa Barbara Channel right now. And this was coming home from Santa Cruz Island. And we had at least 2 of the 3 blue whales we saw were showing their fluke every 6 minutes or so and then diving down deeper. So we live in an amazing area, the Santa Barbara Channel, with such a diversity of whales and dolphins. And just to really highlight that many of these species, including these common dolphins, are all year-round residents, and they are the indicator species of just this incredible productivity of the Santa Barbara Channel. So pretty typical. I'm sure everybody tuning in this evening has been on a boat ride in the Santa Barbara Channel. And on many of the occasions, we get to be escorted by these beautiful animals. So I'm just super excited to share with everyone why we are now the Santa Barbara Channel Whale Heritage Area, one of only 11 whale heritage areas around the world. So just to remind ourselves on the importance of whales and the conservation of whales that have been put in place for over 50 years now. It wasn't long ago, just back in the 1960s, in the decade I was born, that we were still harvesting hundreds of thousands of whales around the world. So many of us think of the whaling period of the 1800s, when of course we whaled whales for their blubber that was refined into oil. But we harpooned and harvested whales up until the moratorium was put in place on the international scale in 1986. So we're witnessing the comeback of the beautiful baleen whales. These are the large great whales that have baleen in their mouth, found in the northern and southern hemispheres around the world. And all of them were hunted for not only their blubber, but for a variety of other products that we used from whales. And just a brief history of the whaling and more the most present moment of whaling. There's of course still 3 countries today that are whaling whales. So I remind everybody, because it was really Save the Whale movement, thanks to this album. For any older members of our audience this evening might have remembered this. The first songs of the humpback whales that really caught the international audience attention about the importance of whales and the complexity of whales and their sophistication of singing these complex songs. So thanks to the work of Dr. Roger Payne, that really started the Save the Whale movement of the 1970s. And around the world, we have about 90 different species of whales, and I say about 90 or so, and all the baleen whales are facing to this direction, and all the toothed whales, including the sperm whale at the top, the largest toothed whale, and then all the dolphins and porpoise that are all part of the toothed whale group. All these animals are cetaceans, so about 90 different species of cetaceans around the world, with 2 new species that have just been documented in the last couple of years or classified as new species, the rice whale in the Gulf of Mexico, and a new species of beaked whale that's found in the southern oceans around the Antarctica Peninsula, discovered off of New Zealand. So there's so much to learn about the world of whales, and I think many of us can remember growing up watching the undersea world of Jacques Cousteau, and alongside his oldest son, Jean-Michel Cousteau, really opened our eyes to the undersea world and gave us a sense of connection to this incredible water planet. It really inspired me personally to pursue a career in marine science and marine education. I started working on the Island Packer boats over 30 years ago in the early 90s, just out of UCSB. And then for the last 25 years, feel very fortunate to have traveled around the world with Jean-Michel Cousteau and his very talented underwater production team, and making documentaries and really giving everybody that emotional connection to the water planet. Jean-Michel is just such an important voice for the ocean. And working with a team, always really highlight the importance of a talented team in producing these underwater documentaries, from an IMAX film to a PBS series. And with all these travels, we did focus on whales a lot. And then most recently, I spent the last 2 Januaries down in Antarctica working as a naturalist, and really was thrilled to see, you might be able to see in this picture, all the little puffs of steam. That's what we look for from a boat. But that's over 100 fin whales out on the horizon. So the comeback of the whales around the world are such an important, great conservation success story, including humpback whales, and we even saw orcas quite a few times down in the Antarctica. In all my travels, I am unfortunately reminded of our direct impact and sort of the ramifications of our excess use of single-use plastic and the impact it's having on the world's oceans and, of course, the wildlife. So this was with Jean-Michel Cousteau and his team as we were filming in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. And these pictures of a dead Laysan albatross was from Midway Island. And to me, that was such a rude wake-up call of just a friendly reminder of everything that we use and then throw away. A lot of times in nature, there is no such thing as throwing things away. It ends up, especially non-biodegradable material like plastic, it just breaks down into smaller pieces, and it's having a direct impact on every link of the food web, both on land and in the ocean. So especially microplastics that are contaminating the food web and definitely impacting the health of our world's whales. So education is key. I do a lot of outdoor education with the Santa Barbara Maritime Museum, was just down the beach in Carpinteria with 3rd graders from Carpinteria Family School today. And just listening to the excitement of the kids when we get them out on the boats with Island Packers and the Santa Barbara Maritime Museum. This is the emotional connection that is going to inspire these leaders of tomorrow to think of their direct connection to nature. And working with Island Packers, it's just a thrill to be back out on the Island Packer boats part-time, leading tours out on the islands. And Chuck is going to go into much more details on why these islands are such a national treasure with such unique species found nowhere else around the world. Around the islands, we have a national marine sanctuary, so only 15 national marine sanctuaries around the country, 5 of them off the West Coast, including the beautiful Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary that circles 6 nautical miles around the 5 islands in the national park. And this area is so dynamic. It's an area of a transition, of a mixing of oceanic currents, the cold, darker colors of the blues and purples that represent the California current that mixes with the warmer current coming up from Mexico. So such an overlap of biodiversity within our marine ecosystem here in the Santa Barbara Channel. It is why we are also a biosphere. So not a lot of people are aware of that, but I'm just really fortunate that we are a part of this international UNESCO biospheres around the world. And then most recently, we've been designated as the Santa Barbara Channel Whale Heritage Area. We are just one of 11 found around the world. And those are the dark circles there, and the lighter purple colors are sites that are in the application process that we were in over a year ago, as it was about a 3-year process to become a whale heritage area. It's a program, a conservation program set up by the World Cetacean Alliance. They're based in the United Kingdom, and they really recognize areas around the world with responsible tourism. So here in the Santa Barbara Channel, not only great responsible tourism, very important conservation initiatives. And these are the 8 whale watching companies that we have in the 3 harbors of the Santa Barbara Channel. And this time of year, the Condor Express that whale watches all year round. The Santa Barbara Whale Watch is a newer company, just has been there for about a year, a small 6-pack boat. And of course, Island Packers and all of our island trips always stopping for whales. And then a few other companies down in the Channel Islands Harbor in Oxnard, including the Pacific Offshore. They've specifically looked for killer whales, and their sightings have been unbelievable in the last few months. Really fun to follow all these companies on social media because you get a sense of what we're seeing. And right now, every species listed on this really nice diagram done by a gentleman who works on the Condor Express. You can see the most common cetacean species of the baleen whales and the toothed whales, and every single species has been seen in the month of May. So from the blue whales recently, humpback whales, gray whales. There's a gray whale right now in Betcher's Bay, Santa Rosa Island. The Condor Express had a fin whale the other day, and we had killer whales on Mother's Day. And we get to see minke whales, and then of course some of our local resident dolphin species of common dolphins, Riso dolphin, and bottlenose dolphins. So a lot of variety, a lot of diversity here in the Santa Barbara Channel. And we've come to appreciate that these whales, as we've brought these whales back from the brink of extinction, we know that restoring whale population is so important for helping us tackle climate change. And just a short little 1-minute video about the World Cetacean Alliance and the Santa Barbara Channel Whale Heritage Area.
The World Cetacean Alliance and the World Animal Protection are pleased to announce the designation of the 9th Whale Heritage Area in the world, the Santa Barbara Channel Whale Heritage Area. This designation highlights the region's commitment to promoting responsible ecotourism, providing more ocean educational opportunities, supporting ongoing research and conservation efforts, and honoring the timeless cultural connection we have to whales. Together, these organizations have launched a new global program, Wildlife Heritage Areas, as the larger initiative to support a coalition of responsible travel businesses with wildlife conservation.
So just to introduce you to some of the common whales, the orcas, when we are out on the whale watching boats and all the companies, we work together out on the waters to really appreciate the opportunity of sharing with visitors from all around the world, the diversity and abundance of our whales and dolphins. We are also, of course, collecting important information through Whale Alert and for the California Killer Whale Project. Anytime we see killer whales in the Santa Barbara Channel, there's most of them, we know them individually. This is Emma and her family. You might notice the second animal in the picture. She has a little E in the trailing edge of her dorsal fin, and that's the matriarch. And the big animal in the foreground, that's Ben, her son. And she always has her family members with her. So when we recognize Emma, we then know all the individuals in her family. And the biologists with the California Killer Whale Project are always thrilled when we get to share the killer whale sightings that we see in the Santa Barbara Channel. This is another one of our favorite families. This is Star, the CA51s. And just like our families, we know them from their family tree. And Star has her second son has a bend in his dorsal fin. So we recognize Bumper pretty easily. And here comes Bumper and his family as they swam under the Vanguard off the west end of Anacapa Island. So this is Ben's older brother, Orion. And then we're going to see Star and Comet. So they look like all like killer whales, but then here comes Bumper. So as soon as we recognize one individual, we then know the entire family. So really, whale watching is really fun in the Santa Barbara Channel, and there's definitely more humpback whales in the Santa Barbara Channel than when I started working out here in the 1990s. And we also contribute our humpback whale sightings to another wonderful research program called Happy Whale. It is now the largest database of humpback whales around the world. And we have seen lots of humpback whales really since February. We now almost see humpbacks every month of the year. So they spend their winter months down in the warmer waters of Mexico and Central America. Then they feed off the California coast. And just like you and I, they have unique markings. So we have a unique fingerprint. For humpback whales, it's a unique fluke print on the underneath side of their tail fluke. So these are just some humpback whales seen in a couple days in the Santa Barbara Channel. And this is a friendly humpback whale we had on March 20th. I'm on the Island Adventure with Island Packers on a 3.5-hour whale watching trip. And this individual whale, humpback whale, mugged us. So this is called mugging.
Right below you.
For over an hour. And I warned everybody they're about to get wet.
Get ready to get wet.
As this whale swam around the boat, everybody was absolutely thrilled. Finally, we were 45 minutes late getting into the harbor because it was so close to the boat. It finally flew for us. And with that fluke, I was able to upload it to Happy Whale and get the ID. So what's really fun is we then get to personalize the experience for all the whale watchers, and we get to encourage them to upload their own individual pictures. They'll then get an email from Happy Whale about that individual, and then we could track these whales over time. So we are helping scientists better understand the movement of humpback whales. And we know they're large baleen whales, so they're filter feeders feeding on anchovies and lunge feeders at the surface, as well as the blue whales that are here in the channel right now. Primarily, they feed on krill. So they're actually a specialist, really focused on krill. There's so much krill in the Santa Barbara Channel right now. We can see it on the depth finder, this thick layer at about 300 to 500 feet deep. So they're diving down. And then at the surface, these whales are pooping. And I like to mention this real quick because it is such an important role these whales are doing in the ocean. They are literally the farmers. They are diving down, feeding down at deeper depths, and then releasing that important nutrient-rich fecal matter at the surface. And all that whale poop is fertilizer for the plant plankton or phytoplankton. And of course, phytoplankton takes CO2 out of the atmosphere. So we had some whales doing this yesterday, and you get downwind of it, it's quite stinky. But the whale fecal matter is so important for scientists. We could even measure the health of the individual whale just by collecting that fecal matter. So once again, whales are vital for the health of our planet. And as we have more and more whales in the Santa Barbara Channel, they are the farmers of the sea, and they're helping us mitigate the impact of climate change. So we know they're regulating climate, they're enhancing ocean productivity, and they're so important for tourism, and why these whale heritage areas are so important to really highlight the importance of ecotourism. As these whales are on the move, they're making amazing migrations on an annual basis, feeding in colder, nutrient-rich waters found at the higher latitudes, and then migrating closer to the equator in the warmer waters to breed and to give birth. And much of their migration is overlapping with the increase of our shipping traffic. This gives you a sense of how we are urbanizing our world's oceans. And why here in the Santa Barbara Channel, we have such an important conservation initiative called the Blue Whales Blue Sky Initiative. Thanks to the Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary and then the Air Quality Board of the City of Santa Barbara and the City of Ventura, working with the shipping companies to encourage them to slow down. I had a boat full of fourth graders last week, and we watched this container ship with a humpback whale mother and calf pair feeding in the northbound shipping lanes. Luckily, this ship was doing the voluntary slowdown, was going less than 10 knots, and the mother and calf were still just continuing in their feeding with dolphins and California sea lions all around. So this is the future of how we need to better manage our world's oceans. And thanks to also the Benioff Ocean Science Laboratory and their collaboration, we now are tracking these individual ships, and we're giving them positive PR when they are slowing down in these voluntary slowdown zones, such as the Santa Barbara Channel. So about 63% of the companies are slowing down when they're traversing the shipping lanes of the Santa Barbara Channel. And to finish with the story of hope, this is one of our favorite humpback whales. Her name is Scarlet. Very obvious why she is named Scarlet. She has some neat propeller wounds. This is one of our whale watchers, Lottie, who comes out, and she's such a wonderful photographer. She gets quite emotional, as we all do when we get mugged by a whale. And this is Scarlett introducing her second calf to the whale watching boat here, Island Packers boat. She mugs the Condor Express every year. And then Scarlett swims right under all the very happy whale watchers. So she is our story of hope, as is all these wonderful community organizations, from governmental agencies to nonprofits to whale watching companies to even ocean-friendly restaurants, working together to really highlight the importance of responsible tourism and to encourage everybody to go out and get their own emotional connection and watch the whales and hike on these beautiful islands, because it is the future we need to continue to work hard for. And one of my many mentors, and not only including Jean-Michel Cousteau and of course Sylvia Earle, but also Jane Goodall, where it is our human heart that needs to be in harmony with our very strong, intelligent brain. So this is where I put all my energy of wanting to make our brighter future, as I do have a son and I have high hopes that he will enjoy an ocean full of whales as we continue to work together as our local community and highlight the Santa Barbara Channel Whale Heritage Area, encourage people to go out whale watching and to appreciate the great conservation initiatives and support all the companies that are really helping and increase our mission of engaging more people in ocean conservation. So with that, I'm going to proudly introduce you to one of very well-known kayak guides out at the Channel Islands. And Chuck is also a very talented photojournalist. And maybe, Ken, you wanted to do the introductions, as I know you have his official bio there, but always fun doing these presentations, as Chuck and I get to be volunteer rangers also out on San Miguel Island. So for him to have the opportunity to share his passion for the islands.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what a wonderful presentation, by the way. I just also want to remind everyone that if you have questions for Holly and also for Chuck's, to put them into our Q&A section, and we'll be able to pick them up right at the end of the presentation. So let me just find that email, which had the intro on it. There it is. There we go. Should have had that teed up. Oh, well. All right, Chuck Graham. He is a freelance writer and photographer and has been a beach lifeguard for 31 years. And he's led kayak tours on Channel Islands National Park since 1998. His work has appeared in Backpacker Magazine, BBC Wildlife Magazine, National Geographic, and a whole bunch of others. He's his award-winning book, Carrizo Plain, where the Mountains Meet the Grassland, was released in 2021. And his newest book, Paddling into Natural Balance, Stories of Kayaking and Conservation Around Channel Islands National Park, was published in November of 2023. I'm looking forward to introducing Chuck. Go for it, please. Oh, actually, Chuck.
Yes, sir.
1 second. You know what I forgot to tell everybody? A land disclaimer that should have been at the very beginning of the presentation. And that is to say that all of this, you two are amazing in bringing forth the natural wonders of our area. And our area is, of course, the unceded Chumash territory of the Chumash people. And we are blessed to be able to live and work in this incredible place. And normally we have a couple PowerPoint slides that I start off with, which has that on it, but we forgot on this presentation. So now with that, and we'll turn it over to Chuck. Please, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having us. I'm glad you mentioned the Chumash there, because I often think about them and their maritime culture and their crossings from the mainland to the islands back and forth and island to island, village to village. So I am very aware of their culture and what they mean to the islands in our community. So it's always on my mind. I'm fortunate to be a kayak guide out of the islands. I've worked for 3 companies out there now, and I currently work for Santa Barbara Venture Company. And this is a recent shot of see if I can say this correctly. Some kayakers with me, and Valella, I believe, otherwise known as By the Wind Sailors. Just an example of what you just never know what you're going to see when you're out there, and things just appear, and every year it's something different, maybe more than one species each year that you're surprised to see. You just never know. There's another recent shot in the Ochre Sea Star, but there's just so much out there to see and to enjoy. Try to slow down and stay in the moment as much as possible. I always say that kayaking is the best way to see the islands. There's just so much you can't get to on foot or even in a boat. You really need a kayak to get in all those nooks and crannies. And when I started writing about the recovery of the islands back in the late 90s, early 2000s, I really focused on paddling and seeing the islands and seeing what was going on out there with my own eyes, as well as attending media trips through the Park Service with bald eagle recovery and island fox captive breeding and peregrine falcons and seals and sea lions. There's just an amazing amount of natural wonders out there for people to experience. When I'm on my own or with a friend or two, paddling around the islands, this is kind of what it looks like. This is a long time ago. This is actually a slide film capture. It's a buddy of mine, Craig Fernandez, and we are paddling from Carrington Point on Santa Rosa Island back to Santa Cruz, the west end of Santa Cruz, and you can see that huge envelope of fog surrounding the passage there, the Santa Cruz Passage, and we actually became engulfed in that fog. It completely wiped us out. We couldn't see anything, but with a compass and using our ears, we were listening for waves crashing on the cliffs and listening for gulls. We finally touched down at the west end of the island there. That's kind of how it rolls. You just never know what it's going to be like. Weather reports aren't always accurate, especially when you're out on the islands. You get something on the mainland and it doesn't always equate out there. So you always have to expect the unexpected from the water. And these are just some shots just of the islands in general, what it looks like out there. This is a beautiful spot. This is Harris Point. This is actually Lester Point looking at Harris Point. And that's not in the spring. That's actually in October. And it's a lot of buckwheat blooming still out there in October. And that's because we get so much fog out there. Fog drip is the largest water input out of the islands. It's not rain. So you get plants, flowers blooming year round out there. Some of that stuff, maybe it blooms 2 or 3 times a year. This is a recent shot. I took this while I was on a run before leading a tour. That's a bushel of giant coreopsis with cavern point in the background at sunrise. And there was one year there while the new pier was being built at Scorpion Anchorage. We were all working at Prisoners Harbor for a year, and it was really special because it was really quiet. There was no campground there. When the boat left, it was just silent and still, and we got to enjoy some of these amazing moments out there. So this was taken actually from the pier, looking to the southeast, to the rest of the end of Santa Cruz Island. And this is way out on the northwest end of San Miguel Island. This is Point Bennett. This is one of Holly's and mine favorite places. This is the largest congregation of seals and sea lions in the world. You get anywhere from 30 to 50,000 animals out there at any given time. 6 different species use this massive sand spit and surrounding bluffs to haul out, breed, pup. It's really exciting to be there. There's lots of sights and sounds, smells, lots of drama. And it's always fun watching them body womp on the beach. So this is September, October at a place called Adams Cove inside of Point Bennett. So big steep berm there, lots of animals basking on the beach. But when those sea lion and fur seal pups get mobile, they're like little kids out there in the shore pound. So nice south swell coming in, pounding the beach, and like little kids, they just get pounded on the sand, get swept up into the basking animals. They disrupt them, and then they run back out there for more. And I and Holly have sat there for like 8 hours watching this. It's a lot of fun. That's the very inside corner of Adams Cove, so you can see the water moving there. It's volatile, and it's a very raw looking experience. It's one of the best wildlife spectacles in the world, and it's right here, not far away. It feels like you're far away, but it's a pretty amazing wildlife spectacle. And that's one we see all the time, whether on the mainland or out of the islands. It's a cute harbor seal pup. This is actually taken inside of a sea cave while I was leading a tour. And this is a California bull sea lion, and you can see his mug is pretty raw. It's pretty beat up. He doesn't care. He doesn't mind. A lot of times we watch these big bull sea lions move bait balls of fish into the cliffs, into the coves, and they literally push the bait fish right out of the water. The fish come flying out of the water. They land in the rocks, and these big boys, they just smack their faces right into the rocks. They don't care about their faces, their teeth. They just want those fish. And this is one of so many nooks and crannies around the islands. This is a little sliver of beach out on San Miguel Island between Hoffman Point and Kyler Harbor. And it's just a small microcosm of all the things that live out there. These are juvenile elephant seals just doing what they usually do this time of the year. Fall time, these juveniles, they're born in winter, spring, and then they stay there their first year because they're not strong enough to travel to the Bering Strait. So they stay put, and they just kind of jostle and figure things out that first year. And so paddling into some of these little nooks and crannies, you see them gathered there, and they're just playing with each other, wrestling. You see seabirds in it all, shorebirds, and it's a great way to just sit in your kayak and just watch it all unfold in front of you. That's a young elephant seal. That's actually a scorpion anchorage. So sometimes every once in a blue moon, we get a young elephant seal that kind of gets moved off course and figuring things out its first year. This one was pretty healthy looking. And those are a bunch of fur seal pups, a bunch of doodle heads. That's out on the beach there at Point Bennett, Adams Cove. And so you see these little groupings of fur seals and sea lions where they nurseries waiting for their mothers to come back to feed them, because they'll nurse and then moms will leave for days out into deep water looking for food. And they all have very distinct calls. So you hear them calling out, you hear the pups call out, you hear the moms call out, looking for each other so they can connect and then nurse some more. But these are all healthy looking fur seal pups that are about 2 or 3 months old. And this is what they do when they're in the water. I took this from my kayak, paddling around San Miguel, around Point Bennett, and getting in those nooks and crannies. And I'm looking at the beach at Point Bennett, and these are a bunch of fur seal pups that are doing something that the biologists call jugging, where they thermoregulate on the water so they can warm themselves on the water. They have all these veins in the tips of their flippers, their tail flippers, and they form a jug handle, bringing their tail flipper and their pectoral flipper together, forming that handle. And at 2 or 3 months old, they're totally mobile. They're in the water, and it's very likely they've never seen a kayaker before. They're born in June, July, and by September, October, they're very mobile. And when they see you in a kayak, it's they're coming out of their skin. They're like little kids. They can't get enough of it. They come swimming right up to the boat. They're splashing. They're banging into the boat. It's a lot of fun. And of course, our seabirds out there, overall, they're doing really well. And pelicans especially are very visible. They're they're doing really well out at the islands. There was a time when they weren't. The pesticide DDT nearly wiped them out. But Anacapa Island is the largest rookery in the western U.S. for the California brown pelican, as well as the western gull. And on Scorpion Rock, they like to roost there. They haven't nested there since the 1970s, but I took this last fall, I believe. And this particular brown pelican had nesting material. And we've seen a couple instances of that where a pelican is holding some nesting material. So hopefully that would be really interesting to see if they came back and started nesting on Scorpion Rock again. This is another shot I took from the kayak, as well as this one, same day. But they're beautiful birds. Not so much when they're really young, but as they mature, they have that creamy yellow head, and then they have that cinnamon running down the back of their neck. And then, of course, they have that beautiful crimson pouch where they store their fish. This is a common murre. I'm seeing a few of these more often this past winter, spring. San Miguel Island is their most southerly rookery, their breeding area. This is an amazing story. Maybe not a lot of people know about it. There's a picture of them in my book at their rookery on Prince Island, which is a big, massive rock outcropping just off San Miguel Island to the east. There's lots of seabirds that nest out there. And these birds came back on their own. There was no human intervention. They had been missing from the islands for about 100 years. Egg collecting, hunting, things like that drove them away. But in 2011, they started showing up again. And so during the pandemic, a little idle and wanted to photograph where they were nesting, and was able to get across the channel and up the islands and around the backside of Rosa, and then finally made it out to San Miguel. And I didn't think they were going to be nesting where they were, but they're nesting on the northwest tip of Prince Island, basically facing right into the swell, right into the wind. Not where I thought they would be, but that's where they were. And then some of the sea biologists at the Park Service told me about a year ago that they were doing aerial surveys, and that they're not only nesting at Prince Island, but they're expanding their range, and they've moved over to Harris Point. So that's a great story, and it's great seeing them out on the water again. And then, of course, the islands always act as a refuge for seafaring birds that are migrating, whether they're land birds or seabirds, shorebirds. One of my favorites that shows up every now and then is a Pacific loon. They're just beautiful birds. Seen a few of those this spring. Gorgeous birds. And this, of course, is also from the kayak. And then, of course, we got these guys. They're here every day out at the islands, black oyster catchers, and they love that intertidal zone when that tide drops real low. And this one's foraging in the mussels. And this is also taken from the kayak. And this is a bird that it's pretty much inspired me to finish my book, my latest book, Paddling into a Natural Balance. There's a bald eagle chapter in there, but I didn't really have any great shots of free-flying bald eagles. Every shot I had was mostly slide film, and it was biologists handling birds that were going to be released on Santa Cruz Island. So this bird, he's 03, and he's known as Theus. If you go to the Institute for Wildlife Studies, they can give you a rundown of the lineage, the current lineage out of the islands of most of the bald eagles that are out there now. There's about 50 of them out there now, and there's about 12 nesting pairs across the chain. Theus here, he showed up sometime in 2020. And so during the pandemic, and when we started working again, when the pier was finished in February 2021, we showed up to work and we started seeing him regularly, almost every day for a long while there. And I thought, well, he's going to leave now because people are here and there's going to be disturbance. But the biologists were telling me if you stay calm, cool, don't make a lot of noise, you stay below them for the most part, then they're pretty much fine with you around them. And that proved to be the case. And I started spending a lot of time in the kayak shooting him. And then he had a mate for a little bit. That's her. She's kind of a mystery gal. She doesn't have a blue tag on her wings. And she does have a an aluminum tag above her right talon, but we haven't seen her of late. And sometimes if the pair isn't compatible, they kind of break up. If they are compatible, then they're monogamous and they'll stay together until one doesn't survive. So Theus's mother is a bit of a rock star at the Park Service. If you go to the Channel Islands National Park website, they have something there called the Eagle Cam. You can actually watch her right now rearing her two latest eaglets with her mate Andor. And Theus's mother, Cruz, that's her name. She was the first eagle born after reintroduction. So that started in 2002 and it went to 2006. And her nest is out on the very west end of Santa Cruz Island. So Theus is broken away. He's eked out a spot at Scorpion Anchorage. So hopefully he'll pair up maybe with this mystery gal again, I don't know, or another female. It'd be great to have a family right there at Scorpion Anchorage. But he has two brothers. One is Henry, 03. He's out on Santa Rosa Island. I believe he had a
04.
no, 04 is out on San Miguel.
Oh. Well, you said 03.
No, oh, sorry. 02
Here we go. Sorry.
is out on Santa Rosa Island. That's Henry.
Mhm.
And 04, Barrett. He is out on San Miguel Island. And I've seen Barrett from the kayak, paddling with some of the guys I work with out at Santa Cruz, and we made it around San Miguel Island last October. And we did see Barrett above Cardwell Point. So it was good to see that. It's good to know that the three brothers are now on each of the three northern islands, and they're eking things out. Hopefully we'll have more nests out there with the three of them. But their grandparents are still out there. They're in Pelican Canyon. One of the birds is a bird from Catalina Island that flew up and then paired up with an eagle with a blue tag, a Santa Cruz Island bird. So there's some great lineage out there, and it's exciting to see bald eagles from the kayak or while you're hiking on the island. It's a great reminder we need these apex predators, the keystone species out there on the islands. The bald eagles are at the top of the food chain. And that's him with the mystery gal on the left. Females are about 33% bigger than the males. It's pretty obvious when you see them next to each other. So we'll see what happens in the future here. Peregrine falcons are also doing well out there. They were also a casualty of the pesticide DDT. And this is also taken from the kayak actually during a tour. And this one has a male common loon that literally was dragging across the water. It went out pretty far to get this bird, and it was heavy with water and literally was dragging it to the cliff where it had to rest. So that gave me the opportunity to get this shot along with a lot of others. He rested. The bird was still alive. He had to subdue it every now and then he was rested. He flew around the corner to Cavern Point where its nest is. And owls are something that we have out there every now and then. We get burrowing owls like this guy. This is on Anacapa Island, and they come out here in the winter. We have barn owls out there, saw-whits. Right now we got long-haired owls in Scorpion Canyon. Mostly we hear them. They're hard to find. They're hard to see, but they are out there. There's a saw-whet owl. They're little tiny guys. They're about 8 inches tall. So yeah, we're looking for them at night mostly. Mostly we hear them though. And when there were 4 saw-whet owlets a couple of years ago, and they would literally, I can say they literally kept me up all night. They wouldn't be quiet. So I'm grateful for. And then we also get other nocturnal birds like this porwheel that love southerly facing slopes where the sun still keeps them warm. And every now and then, if you go walking around at night, you might run into one of these guys. And this nest actually just fledged. This is an Allen hummingbird nest in a side canyon on the southeast end of Santa Cruz Island. Lots of hummingbirds out there. And this is arguably the most, one of the most important birds out on the islands. This is the endemic island scrub jay. And biologists from the Smithsonian have told me many times that this is the bird that's most responsible for restoring oak woodland habitat across Santa Cruz Island. These birds, their cousin is the western scrub jay, and these birds went through something called gigantism, where they grew larger, deeper blue, bigger bills. And the adults, there's about 2,000 of them on Santa Cruz Island, and the adults, they average about 3,500 to 6,000 acorns where they cache them per year. And they innately know to cache the acorn point down so it germinates. And then they also innately know to plant the acorns upslope. So they can reach those ridge tops. And earlier I talked about fog drip, and that fog sweeps across the island, keeps things moist, leaks into the groundwater, feeds our creeks out the islands. And these birds are directly responsible for all that. And that's one with some nesting material resting on a lemonade berry at the very bottom of Scorpion Canyon, right by the beach. And there's a bird that's actually more rare than the island scrub jay. This is the northern Channel Island loggerhead shrike, and this is two fledglings, two chicks that had recently fledged their nest at the bottom of Scorpion Canyon, and they're very noisy. But there's only about 40, maybe just a little more than 40 of them on the whole island. They have to compete with jays, and they're more dominant than these shrikes. But on Santa Rosa Island, where there are no jays, there used to be, but there's over 200, maybe 240 on Santa Rosa Island. So they're a very neat bird to see. They have that raptor-like beak, and it gives them that little bit of a raptor look. They are known for impaling their prey on sticks and old rusty nails and things like that. And I actually did see it do that to a side blotch lizard a couple of years ago. That's another look at a fledgling. And this is an animal that we're seeing more of. Mostly you smell them before you see them, but this will give you some perspective of how tiny the island spotted skunk is. That's my foot, and that's by the old ranch house there at Scorpion. And when the figs are ripe, it's a bit of a smorgasbord out there for us guides and the skunks and foxes and birds. And this one, I just looked down, it came right up to me and started licking my feet, probably the salt off my feet after a kayak tour. But real small, they weigh about a pound. And there's a special island spotted skunk research group now, and they're learning a lot about this nocturnal animal. There's about 1,000 of them, they say, between the two islands. So they're one of the rarest carnivores in the world, one of the smallest. And they are getting in the trees as well. They love those figs. And you can see that one kind of doing a pull up. I was getting the last bit of that fig. That was a nice looking fig. It was nice and purple when it started on it. And then you can get in places where you don't expect to see them. So we have a lot of bench seats out there for folks to store their stuff while we're leading to kayak tours. And this past winter, we had a bench that wasn't usable anymore, but we use it for storage. And we lifted it up to try to get the awning out of there. And there was 2 skunks in there, and they were living in there. And they had a bunch of little nests in there, and the combination of its stench and its poop made my eyes water. It was so strong, but they're cute. And we kind of left it alone. It was there for a few weeks. They have a bigger range than the island fox, and they kind of tend to move through their range. They'll spend a couple weeks in one part and then move on to another part. So you see them and then you don't see them. And we saw this one for a couple weeks, and then it moved on with its, I think, its mate. That's a better look at them. Then, of course, probably the most well-known animal out there is the island fox, and their recovery has been well documented. I remember the days where you wouldn't see any island foxes at all. You would definitely see more pigs than island foxes. And I can remember, going for a run from Scorpion Anchorage to Smuggler's Cove and back and not seeing anything the whole time. And, the population got down below 100, maybe as low as 50. Now, today, island fox business is booming. The last count of population grids brought the number of foxes on Santa Cruz Island to about 2,900. Amazing. about 2,600 on Santa Rosa Island, smaller island. And then San Miguel Island, even smaller of an island, and about 350 there. So they're doing well out there. There was a long period of time there when they were on the endangered species list for about 12 years, and it was kind of touch and go there. They are monogamous, and the biologists out there with the Park Service and Nature Conservancy, the Institute for Wildlife Studies, they all did an amazing job bringing these animals back from the brink. It got as low as about 15 animals on Santa Rosa and San Miguel Islands. And because these animals are monogamous and they're all a little bit different genetically, physically, they could have lost a population on one island, it would have been gone forever. So the biologists, they need to be commended over and over again. They brought this animal back, and when they came off the endangered species list, they were the swiftest recovery of a terrestrial mammal in the history of the Endangered Species Act. So we see them all the time now, every day, all day. They're around, and it's always a great reminder that conservation works, and if it's allowed to work, amazing things can happen. And the islands are a great example of that, and that's one of the reasons why I put the book together that I did, is to demonstrate that the islands are a great example, and that it can be a leader for other conservation projects around the world. So this is a dad, and he's behind his son, and they're playing. And the son, he has half a tail, so we call him Stubby. And you can see him there with his half tail. So we see them almost every day. This is right down by the water, by the pier. And that's them getting a sip of water. And then that's the dad. He's actually rubbing his glands on the sand. We actually had a storm in December that swept over the beach, the berm, over the cobble, and into where the kayaks were, and it filled in with a whole bunch of nice fresh sand. And he was seen rubbing his glands on the sand to mark his territory. And then, of course, they're great tree climbers, better than the skunks. Island foxes have semi-retractable claws, so they rip up and down trees like cats. They're very cat-like, and they can get out on the very skinniest of limbs to get the figs that they want the most. And they kind of use their tail like a rudder as they're maneuvering through these spindly branches. And ravens, what can I say about them? I love them and I hate them. The same with the foxes. This fox was completely ignoring this raven. The fox found something to eat, probably someone that dropped food on the ground, and the raven wanted it and was antagonizing the fox by pulling on its tail. But the fox didn't even look over its shoulder. He just let it tug on its tail, and the fox got everything that it wanted. And that's a mama fox from 2021. I call them the corral foxes. She had 2 pups. They were born down by the water, and then she and her mate brought them up into the corral where we got to see them every single day. It was fantastic. And they nurse standing up, and you can see the 2 pups where they're laying on their backs and they're nursing, and they're pressing their little legs up into their mom. When she was done nursing them, she really didn't, when she nursed them, she didn't want anything to do with them. So she would run up the hillside to get away from them when they weren't strong enough to follow her. And you'd see her peeking behind rocks and bushes so they couldn't see her. But it's always great to experience how the foxes raise their young. It's great because there's no predators after them now. So we get to see a lot of island foxes out there. And that's a couple of pups from 2019. They were actually born under the ranger station in Scorpion Canyon. And then they were moved up on top of the hill just to the west of the ranger station. And we would see them poke in and out of the lemonade berry. They don't really keep dens. They don't have any predators to worry about. So that's another reason why we get to see them so often. But anyway, they're a great conservation story, and I'm always appreciative of experiences with them. And that's the cover of my book. That's Scorpion Rock in the background. That's some of the kayak guides in the middle there, seaside daisies, and then I had pelicans fly in, and that kind of sealed the deal with that photo, and that kind of sealed up the shot for the cover. And if you would like a book, if you're interested in a book, that's the details where you can reach me, and I'll mail you a book. Anyway, thank you very much, everybody, for your time. Thank you for viewing. Holly and I appreciate your time, and maybe we'll see you out at the islands.
Well, thank you so much, Chuck and Holly. Two distinct but wonderful presentations. And they cross over in about the place that we're talking about, but it's interesting how you deal with fauna of the ocean and of the islands. It's much appreciated and takes me back, especially the baby skunk or the skunk that looks like a baby, the spotted skunk. We still have questions coming in, and you can still ask them if you want. Put them into the Q&A for both Holly and for Chuck. Let me start though with a couple that we already received. One is from Anonymous, basically wanting to know how noise pollution from the ships affect cetaceans.
That's a great question. I appreciate that question. Part of the Blue Whales Blue Sky Initiative is not only are the ships slowing down so the whales could get out of the way, but it is better for air quality, so less air pollution when the ships are going slower, and less noise pollution when the ships are going slower. There's a good article it's coming out in the Independent, researcher from Scripps Institute that really from looking at long-term data of noise within the Santa Barbara Channel, she almost is quoted as saying it's like being at a rock concert and almost standing like right in front of the speakers. So noise pollution is quite a concern, especially the toothed whales that depend on echolocation, but even the larger baleen whales that make very low noise, very loud sounds that could travel across entire ocean basins. That's how they even find each other, that the noise is very disruptive to their communication, their echolocation, and their ability to find food and find mates. So that is a concern, and there's some great conservation initiatives. And one of them right here is our Blue Whales Blue Skies.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a real fan, as you know. Let's see, Lori Camille asks or says, first off, such a fascinating talk. She's referring to your talk. Curious how the speed of ships is and the speed of ships that is the least disturbance to cetaceans is determined. Also, is it being enforced?
Yeah, so it's a voluntary slowdown, and the enforcement is just through, you could use AIS and you could track ships, anybody out on their own personal boat or on one of the whale watching boats or island packer boats. We could see all the ships in the channel and how fast they're going. So that's a great way to track them. And then of course the Benioff is using acoustic recordings, and they're using AI to give real-time information to the ship captains of the presence of whales. And a lot of the local ship, a lot of the captains of the different whale watching companies will not even be shy and will call the large ships if they're going over 10 knots. So these ships on average, these are 300 metric tons, are huge ships, 1,000 feet long, carrying maybe over 10,000 containers. And these ships travel 20 knots, a little over 20 miles per hour. And the research has shown that when the ships reduce their speed in half, that the whales then have enough time to get out of the way. So the ships are asked to go 10 knots or less when traversing the Santa Barbara Channel. There is some state legislation put in place now, thanks to our local assembly member, who is putting in place to increase the zones of these voluntary slowdowns and make it statewide. So there's another voluntary slowdown zone up off of San Francisco. And we hope that it doesn't become mandatory in the sense that we don't want our whales to be critically endangered. But off the East Coast, there are mandatory slowdown zones because of the critically endangered Northern Atlantic right whale. So right now it's a voluntary slowdown here in the Santa Barbara Channel, down close to Los Angeles, and then up off of San Francisco.
Great, interesting. Okay, I have some other questions that seem to have gotten stimulated by uh, your Chuck's talk. Two people, Susan King and Anonymous, asked about the discovery of the disease. Is there been a discovery or anything, any information about what's happening with the disease that's affecting so many of the pelicans?
I haven't heard anything. It's that time of the year where we get domoic acid, and that's been a factor in the past. I haven't heard anything about that. I have seen a couple of dead pelicans while leading tours. But one of them had a broken wing. Otherwise, pelicans are so abundant out there. They're doing really well. They look really healthy. There's been lately, the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of bait fish flowing with the current down coast, down island. And there's been a lot of food in the water, and the birds are really enjoying it. Not just pelicans, but also western gulls, hundreds and hundreds of cormorants flying by in formation. So you wouldn't know it really looking out there. I don't know, maybe it's a mainland thing. I'm thinking we'll find out eventually though. But as far as being out on the islands and seeing, what I see is West Anacapa and Middle and East, those are very important breeding colonies, perching sites for California brown pelicans. And we see so many coming to and from along the islands and out in the passage. You wouldn't notice if they were in trouble or not. I don't believe they are out there.
Okay.
I've seen a headline news that said that hundreds of our wildlife care networks, including here in Santa Barbara, the Santa Barbara Wildlife Care Network, many of the care networks have hundreds of pelicans, and they're said that they're starving, and it's perplexing why, because as Chuck mentioned, and what we're seeing even right off the beach in Carpinteria this morning with third graders, we were watching this huge feeding frenzy with hundreds of pelicans diving, bottlenose dolphins, all feeding less than a mile offshore. So there's no doubt this cold water, this winds of the spring, mixing that upwelling, it's just extremely productive in the Santa Barbara Channel. So it is a little perplexing on why there's so many skinny, starving pelicans that are being rescued and cared for at the different wildlife care networks up and down the coast.
And I want to say about a week to 10 days ago, I was in my lifeguard tower and I had a feeding frenzy, a huge bait ball of fish between the shoreline and the oil platforms. And it went on, I timed it, it went on for 75 minutes. And there were so many birds on this bait ball, mass amount of pelicans, a lot of cormorants. I'm sure there were some other things mixed in there, but the amount of food we're seeing, on the mainland and out of the islands in the channel, it's kind of confounding why they're struggling right now.
Yeah, amazing. More comments are coming in about that right now as I go through these. This one's kind of interesting. I heard that eagles use island foxes as food. Now, that was certainly the case when the golden eagles were there, right? But
That's not bald
you
eagles. That's why it's such an important species out there as a keystone species. They always want fish first. They have amazing eyesight. They can see a fish a mile away. And it always blows my mind that because the park is so unique, half of it's underwater with a 1 mile boundary around each island, that I'm looking at it, that 03, that eagle, and he can see a mile, all the way out to that boundary and go get a fish. But they also enjoy seabirds. I've seen them with common murres and gulls. And then of course they also scavenge marine mammal carcasses. But island foxes, no, they don't go after island foxes.
Yeah, that was the problem with the golden eagles when they were there.
Correct.
Until they were removed. So maybe that's what he was referring to. I'm not sure. Paige Hiller Adams, hello Paige, asks, why are there no island scrub jays on Santa Rosa? Well, they are in the fossil record.
They are. They went extinct maybe probably due to cattle ranching and habitat degradation on Santa Rosa Island. I've talked to a few biologists, and it's in my book. There is a chapter on island scrub jays, and I talk about the possibilities of the West Nile virus eventually touching down on the islands. It hasn't happened yet, supposedly, but biologists tell me it's a state of not if, but when. And there is talk of possibly moving some jays back to Santa Rosa Island. I'm not sure how much traction that's gotten since I've heard that. That wasn't that long ago, but I could see something like that happening down the road.
Yeah, I remember hearing that years past too. Maybe a discussion at the island symposium or something like that. But yeah, that would be an interesting thing to try. And I've had discussions with people about it. I could just debates about it to, if there's enough acorns on Santa Rosa right now to support a population. And there's not that many coastline oaks. There's lots of island scrub oak. And anyway, somebody else asked if there's a place that you can see this webinar again. So I'll give that out right now. It's our website, and slash with a slash in the word webinars. So that's CIRWEB.org/webinars. So CIR web, like webpage.org/webinars, and give us a couple of days, but we'll have this presentation up there. And all of the presentations that we've done, the webinars that we've done in the past are there. It's just loaded full of great information. So let me see what else we have here. Lots of thanks, lots of people saying how wonderful the presentation are. So many comments. Somebody asked you to post your contact information. And somebody said another great presentation. And what happened? There was another person in here who was saying hi, but I lost that person, sorry. Anyway, any way to give us your contact information now? Good way to get a hold of you? I mean, verbally?
Yeah, well, Chuck's, this is his website here, Chuck Graham Photography.
You can
Yeah.
also get me through my website. You can email me. You can also get me on Instagram and direct message me. My Instagram feed is Chuck Graham Photo. And those are the two best ways to get me.
And my email is just my first name, last name. So hollylohuis@gmail.com. And same on Instagram. More than welcome to send a message via Instagram or Facebook.
Excellent. Well, I think we've answered all the questions. If somehow we missed some, I apologize, but I think we got them all. And thank you so much for your wonderful presentations that were just stimulating in different levels for me tonight. I have both interest in both spheres that you covered tonight. Thanks to John Ziegler for helping out in the background and